Hello, thanks for coming back to talk about another important consideration when adopting trauma-informed practices. Today's topic is the various aspects of trauma-informed practice that need to be included in a comprehensive adoption of practices that support kids and staff in schools. First off, let's rethink the ACE score a little bit. We all have a perspective of what the ACE score from the ACE survey does and what it's intended to measure. Let's challenge our thinking a little bit. First of all, the ACE survey is a great learning tool, but it's not comprehensive. And as you probably know from recent events, there are a whole lot of things that are traumatic that ought to be on the ACE survey that aren't. And so when we think of ACEs, let's be comprehensive, whether it be something that's caused by bullying, by homelessness, by COVID, by racism, by neglect, by drug and alcohol abuse. It's all on the table. And so besides just the number of ACEs that are a measure of how kids might be impacted, there are some other things: age, source, frequency, duration, and intensity that influence how much of an impact each individual ACE might have on a child's outcomes. And those can be buffered by three main categories of positive things: relationships, resilient skills, and protective factors. And we're going to talk about all three of those in just the next couple of slides. But let's take one example to show you how that string of red terms might work together. A child might only have one ACE when they take the ACE score. It might be something related to bullying, or maybe something related to racism. And an ACE score of 1 seems pretty low. But when you take into account that some of those things start at a very young age, they may be originating from a place that the child would normally feel safe in, home or school. They may occur frequently. They may occur over a long period of time. And with all of that, each individual event might be fairly low intensity, but the combination makes that a very impactful, almost overwhelming obstacle for the child to overcome, unless we do some buffering. So let's take a look at that. So this is probably familiar to a bunch of you already. It's somewhat like an MTS pyramid. You notice that on the left, we have universal application to individual application from bottom to top. And on the right, we have high cost at the top, low cost at the bottom. And we had division line in the middle: preventative below, restorative above. So let's talk about the colors and what they do. So the blue zone are community supports, food pantries, for example, childcare, recreation programs, all sorts of things that support the family and the kids so that the family stability is the highest it can be. Even drug and alcohol programs, counseling programs for parents that need it, that helps the family be better so the kids can be better. When kids get to school, they move into the green zone. Those are preventative practices and supports that help kids learn skills and behaviors and attitudes that are culturally responsive, that are appropriate for safe learning, and set the student up to not graduate to need restorative services. But kids do need restorative services at time, and that's where yellow zone practices come in. Those are the resilience building and practicing and skill development, small group activities, mentoring groups, counseling groups that schools have in place to help kids that need a little bit more support. Every once in a while, some kids, unfortunately, need more than that. Things happen at home, at school, in other aspects of their lives that put them in a crisis response demand situation. And so we have red zone supports, wraparound services for the student and their family. And so here's an example of what might be found in a district at each level, green, yellow, and red, and some examples of some of the kinds of strategies that might be appropriate in each of those. Now, no district is going to have all of these, but every district ought to have some of these. And certainly these are just examples. There are plenty more. Each one would demand a very micro font slide of its own to list everything. But the point is that it's a toolbox approach, that you don't have just one thing that you do and assume it fits all kids. In this case, we have a progression of things from green zone, yellow zone, and red zone to meet the demands that kids are expressing by their circumstances. Individualized, not one size fits all. At the bottom of that pyramid, you may have noticed that there were some additional boxes that were just a little off green. And these are the green zone fundamentals that many districts use as the basis for building a school climate that's safe, positive, and engaging. And you can look at any of those, and I would expect that probably you can visualize how each of those can make a difference in how staff and kids interact, how they build relationships with each other, and how together all of these can contribute to a school climate that supports personal and academic growth. I'd like you to notice a couple of the things down at the bottom, numbers 9 and 10, belonging for all, and inclusion of staff and students in resilience building. That's important. Let's take a look at number 1 and an example of that so you kind of get an idea of what this might really represent. Developmental relationships. Well, you might say to yourself, well, I have relationships with all my kids. The question is, do you have a casual relationship or do you have a developmental relationship? One that helps kids be the best they can be, become their best selves. And these are the kind of relationships that we have to think of as adults as trustworthy, purposeful on our part, that help kids learn about the world, help them develop awareness and practice skills that help them in all aspects of their lives, that cultivate their abilities to shape their own lives. Agency, really important. And maybe bigger than any, help them discover their own narrative, their own dream, who they are and what they could become. Developmental relationships are an important aspect of a safe, caring school environment, and that's one of the things that's built into that pyramid approach to trauma-informed practice. Another aspect of trauma-informed practice is that there needs to be a plan. So in your community, birth to 5, what's going on and how can you support that? In each of the grade level bands, what's going on? Is there green, yellow, and red support for kids? And do teachers have access to all of those supports? And how well does everything that happens up to grade 12 support kids for their post-diploma and rest of life experiences? Here are just some suggestions as we end, some things that you can do to help reduce the behavior issues that sometimes come along with ACE trauma issues in schools. First of all, green zone, work to prevent or reduce ACE trauma factors in families. Build partnerships and relationships with people in your community, really important. Teach kids and staff the skills that they need to manage themselves. Co-regulation, you may have heard that term. That means that a well self-regulated adult is working to help children regulate themselves. Without a self-regulated adult, the process gets really, really difficult. And then last of all, make sure that you reduce in every environment you can the number, frequency, and intensity of triggers, things that might set kids that have hidden trauma that might set them off. And by reducing triggers, you reduce trauma events, you increase instructional time, and therefore, just by default, you increase student success and a sense of belonging. Thanks for taking the time to watch this, and you might want to take a look at the other two parts of the series. Thanks for attending.